Welcome to another session. So we have already discussed Parsons' theory of social action and pattern variables. So today we move on to discuss the next most comprehensive stage of Parsons' framework. That's the theory of social system. So let me tell you guys, this forms the very core of structural functionalism in sociology. And if you get a question on this, many people try to avoid Parson, but if you get any question from Parson, whatever we discussed so far, I don't think that you'll face any problem. We have done it beautifully, social action. We have done even more beautifully pattern variables. And we are going to do it in the similar way, social system and multiple other topics also, which comes here, the moving equilibrium. But here, since it's revision, it's going to be slightly difficult for me to draw diagram and everything. Actual class, you can see even moving equilibrium also. I've shown how the diagram, the block diagram, how the feedback is given and how various mechanisms is acting, and then how equilibrium is brought back when there is a disturbance. So diagrams and everything, either you go through the PDF or you go through the actual class, things will be covered. Or when we talk about the AGIL model, right, adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency, within adaptation, further AGIL will come. Within that also, further divisions will come. All those I will not be able to draw here, but I can just sit and talk, right? So this is for those who have already understood that and gone through that. Take it as revision, not for someone who's learning social action for the first time. Okay, so the theory of action we have discussed, which was mainly focusing on the individual actor, and pattern variables we discussed in terms of the role dilemmas, because there are role expectation in traditional society and in modern society, but there is a conflict when it comes to societies in transition, and different patterns as what we have seen. And the theory of social system that we are going to discuss will explain how those actions and roles will integrate into an organized and self-sustaining structure. That's the society itself. So the action, so first we'll see how the action that lead to interaction, that interaction lead to social system. So that's exactly what we need to discuss. So from an action to interaction to system, let's begin step by step. The same logic also what Parson followed. So starting with action, we done that. We need to talk about interaction now and system. Action means every individual act is oriented towards others, right? So you have action, we have defined that. So if the action is oriented towards others, like when two or more actors are there and there is a reciprocation, I am doing an action, there is a reciprocation from the other end. That means social interaction. So there is an action from the other side also. So action, reaction in terms of a kind of reciprocation. That's what action lead to interaction. So action, if the action is oriented towards another person and there is a mutual reciprocity, that's when interaction. So every individual act is oriented towards others, and then these action is oriented towards other person and there is a mutual reciprocity. The other person also reciprocate each other's action, then social interaction occur. And this interaction, if it is guided by some shared goal, you and me have some shared goal that you want to crack this exam, right? I want you to be the best in sociology. So the common goal is there, norms and values we follow, a boundary we follow, abstract boundary, and then it forms a system. So an action lead to interaction when there is mutual reciprocity, and this interaction will become social system if there is some shared goals, values, norms, and boundaries. I repeat, action become interaction if there is mutual reciprocity. This interaction becomes social system if there are some shared values, norms, boundaries, etc. The detailed definition I have given in the PDF, go through that. So action plus reciprocity plus shared values, goals, etc. is what social system. This classroom itself is a mini social system, right? We have a common goal that you want to success, you want UPSC success. We follow norms and values. We have respect towards each other. We have the discipline also in the class. And there is an the abstract boundary, that's our class, the group, the WhatsApp group or the Zoom group or whatever we have. Right, let's look at the Parsons definition, how Parsons defined this in his book Social System 1951. A social system consists of plurality of individual actors interacting with each other in a situation which has at least a physical or environmental aspect actors who are motivated in terms of tendency to optimization of gratification and whose relation to their situation, including each other, is defined and mediated in terms of system of culturally structured and shared symbols. Every point is important. Let's explain this. Okay, it's long, but let's simplify this. Okay, so first component, plurality of actors. What does that mean? Interaction among two or more individuals. So individual actor will never come to a system. Plurality of actor is very important. So interaction among two or more actors, individuals. Then the physical or environmental aspect. Every interaction occurs within a context or boundary. Then the third point, optimization of gratification, which is nothing but each actor act to achieve some goals or some kind of satisfaction, right? Gratification, goal attainment is there. And culturally structured symbol like norms, values, meanings, all these will regulate the action. So in simple terms, when individual interact reciprocally, mutual reciprocity is there with shared goals, norms, and boundaries, a social system is formed. So either this definition or the one which I've discussed in the beginning, action, if it is oriented towards others, and if it's in a state of mutual reciprocity, interaction it becomes. And this interaction, if it is shared by common values, goals, norms, abstract boundary, etc., it becomes social system. So that's the simple understanding, but this definition you should be knowing and you should be writing. And he gave some conditions for the existence of social system. The condition one, interaction between two or more individuals. Cool, six conditions are there, two or more individuals. And the interaction must occur in a defined social situation. That means a context must be present. And the individuals must have a shared, collective goals like we have, right? So two or more individuals are there. Two individuals, even if one person is attending the session, two individuals, you and me, right? And it's in a social situation. The context is there and the collective goal is there. Members must be motivated to participate. If you don't have motivation, you are not going to sit and watch this video, at least till now, right? And there must be consensus on norms and role expectation. I know the role that I need to perform. You know the role that you need to perform. So there is a consensus that I have to teach and you have to learn. And there must exist an abstract boundary distinguishing us from others. No psychology student is come and going to watch this video. No history student is going to come and watch this video. So there is an abstract boundary that only we have created. Cool. Now let's look at the functional theory of social system now in two phases. So Parsons theory goes beyond defining the system. So we have just seen the definition. So far what we understood is action, reciprocity, interaction, system. We define action. When there is a reciprocity, interaction. When there is shared values, etc., then it becomes system. We discuss the conditions. Now let's look at the theory. He wanted to explain how systems survive and function. So if you see his functional analysis, it has two interrelated parts. Mechanism equilibrium phase or moving equilibrium. This is something which has been asked separately. And requisite functionalism phase, that's AGIL model that they ask in 20 mark most of the time. So moving equilibrium mostly I've seen in 10 marker, AGIL model in 20 marker, or social system in 20 marker where you need to write both. Okay, so requisite functionalism alone, AGIL can be asked in 20 marker, 10 marker also, moving equilibrium also separate question. And both of these I have explained in the class with the proper diagram. Here I'll just tell you what I've explained there. I cannot draw diagram, I can just only tell you. So though you should be in a position to connect when I tell certain things, yeah, this is a diagram that this guy has have drawn at that point of time. So Parson believes society is always in an equilibrium, right? This equilibrium is dynamic. That's what moving equilibrium. It keeps moving, it keeps shifting. The equilibrium keeps changing and it's not static. So whenever there is a disturbance, like see, society is always in a equilibrium. And when there is a disturbance, so some feedback will be given. So there are certain, this is how the diagram, there are certain mechanisms, that mechanisms will do some functions and keep society in equilibrium. If there is a disturbance, some feedback will be given to the mechanisms, so they will act again and they will bring back the equilibrium. So that disturbance is temporary. So the disturbance could be in terms of technology or pandemic like COVID or policy changes. So some specific mechanisms, like it could be family, it could be law, it could be education, it could be religion, they will act and restore the balance and bring back the equilibrium. So for example, there is a disturbance, and when the disturbance occurs, there will be a feedback. You need to draw in a block diagram, and feedback is given to specific mechanisms, and they will do the adjustment, bring back the equilibrium. That's what moving equilibrium. For example, during COVID, old norms broke, right? The new mechanisms at that point of time, remote work, online learning, social distancing, that created the new normal scenario. So that became the new equilibrium. As society evolved, this temporary disequilibrium will be there, and you keep doing this continuous readjustment. That's what I mean by moving equilibrium. So society is always in an equilibrium. We always find that equilibrium. Society will always be in an equilibrium. To make society in an equilibrium, there are specific mechanisms. If there is a disturbance, feedback will be given, bring back the equilibrium. So there could be temporary disturbance or temporary disequilibrium, but there will be a continuous readjustment to bring back the equilibrium. Okay, now the next phase, that's the requisite functionalism phase. That's where we need to discuss the AGIL model. So in this phase, Parsons classified all mechanisms that we have seen just before into 4 universal functional requisites. So these requirements or these mechanisms that's acting to bring back the equilibrium, those mechanisms are basically 4. These are 4 universal functional requirements. That's what requisites. That the functions that every system must perform to survive. So these are adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency. Draw in a matrix AGIL. Adaptation, adjusting to the environment and securing resources. And which system providing in the society? It's for us, it's the economic system. Goal attainment, defining goals and mobilizing resources to achieve them. Which system? Political system. Integration, coordinating parts and maintaining harmony. Which system? Cultural system. The law, religion, education, family. Family comes in the next. L, latency. So AGIL, adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency. Latency is the pattern maintenance, like preserving motivations and values through socialization. Who? It's the pattern maintenance, pattern management, tension management, family, fiduciary system. So to survive, every system must have to adapt, must have to set goals, integrate, and maintain latency. That means adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency. So to survive, every system have to adapt, one requirement, have to set goals, the other requirement, have to integrate between the parts, and have to maintain the latency, like the tension management, pattern maintenance, etc. Cool. Now, latent function we need to discuss in detail, but this will be discussed in detail in Merton. When we talk about latency, it has 2 sub-functions. Pattern maintenance, that's external, that ensuring the members act according to expected roles and cultural standards. That's external. Tension management, that's the internal, hidden. So that's what ultimately latency is all about. That's the handling, stress part, the strain within the individual to sustain the motivation. So families and schools, they play the major role in both these scenarios, both these situations. So maintaining pattern and managing tension. So you need to draw that functional metrics of AGIL model, have to draw the diagram, adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency. And in adaptation, you can fill, then after that, adaptation, you should fill economic system, goal attainment, political system, integration, cultural system, latency, family or fiduciary system. You need to fill the metrics. So these 4 functional prerequisites are interdependent. So failure of one will affect the other. So how will you show the interdependence? Arrow here, arrow here, arrow here, arrow here, arrow here, arrow here. Like this, you need to draw arrow also. So you have shown that interdependence. So you need to first draw AGIL. Second matrix, A, adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency, where you can write economic system, political system, cultural system, and fiduciary system if you want. Or AGIL, keep it like that. Show the interconnectedness. One A to G, one arrow, A to G, G to A, reverse arrow. And A to L, one arrow, L to A, another arrow. Like this, you need to complete it. We have done it in detail. That's why I don't have resources to draw that now. Now let's generalize this. You remember in the last session, I told you I'm going to extend this to action system also. So Parsons argued that if one function, for example, adaptation, is fulfilled by a system, which system? Economic system. But that in itself will again have its own AGIL needs. That means you draw AGIL, and in the AGIL, A is economic system. So the adaptation needs are fulfilled by the economic system, and which in itself have again AGIL. So what I need to do is draw AGIL, take the first, and then divide that into 4 again. Within that, another AGIL. So that's why there's a circulational argument. That's one of the criticism also. And within that also another AGIL. So every system, whether it's social or non-social, have the same 4 functional prerequisites. So adaptation need is fulfilled by economic system, which in itself have again adaptation requirements, AGIL requirements, which again itself have AGIL. In the goal attainment also further divide, but one only you need to show. So that recursive logic, that's why Parsons theory is called a grand theory, and it applies from the smallest organization to the whole of humanity. So there was a question that have been asked, university, how university can be analyzed using AGIL. So let's talk, that's how they will ask you, how university can be analyzed by using Parsons AGIL model. So here you need to explain what are the AGIL model. Adaptation needs are fulfilled by the finance department of university. Instead of economic system, it's the finance department. Goal attainment, it's the governing body of the university. Integration, that's the student teacher community. Latency, that's the counseling, value education, etc. Okay, now let's connect it with the action system. So this Parsons, what he says is this AGIL model is nothing but the abstractions or the action system that we discussed, the organismic system, personality system, the cultural system, and social system are nothing but the abstractions of the AGIL model if you extend it. So Parsons viewed the AGIL functions as the abstract foundation for all 4 action systems that we discussed earlier. Adaptation, it's the organismic system. Goal attainment, it's the personality system. Integration, it's the cultural system. Latency, it's the social system. So the AGIL model operate within and across these 4 systems. Within the system also AGIL is there. Across the system also it's there, and it's connecting all different dimensions like biological, psychological, social, and cultural. All these dimensions are also connected, right? So now let's also talk about one more important part, that's cybernetic hierarchy of control. That's the final piece of this. How these systems interact and maintain stability is also required to know, right? So we have seen that there are 4 action systems. They are in continuous interaction. So these 4 action systems keep exchanging 2 resources. They are always in continuous interaction and they keep exchanging 2 resources. So there are 2 types of flow, energy flow and information flow. Organismic system is the source of energy. Cultural system is a source of information. So information flow from cultural system, energy flow from organismic system. So you start with cultural system at the top, energy system, the organismic system at the bottom. Show that, the flow, right? So source of information and source of energy. When I say energy flow, what does that mean? The motivation, biological drive, like that. When I talk about information flow, it's nothing but the values, ideas, knowledge, etc. So you start with this cultural system, social system, personality system, organismic system. You can show the arrow, you can show flow of energy this side, flow of information on the other side, and show the arrow. From organismic system, energy is flowing. From cultural system, information is flowing. And like this, up, down arrows. So if now, see, any of this, a flow of energy or information, if there is any disturbance, then the equilibrium break. So when the equilibrium break, what happens? That trigger the feedback mechanisms, and that lead to adjustments, and that bring back the equilibrium. So there is a social change. So what is social change according to Parsons? With cybernetic hierarchy of control, you need to explain that. When there is a break of energy or information in the flow, the equilibrium break, that's when new mechanisms will act, bring back new equilibrium. So that's what social change. So social change for Parsons is a process of restoring equilibrium through new mechanisms. So there is a disturbance, new mechanisms will act, new equilibrium will come. That's what social change. So let's summarize now this grand theory. We started with social action at the individual level. At the individual level, we discussed social action concept. There we discussed motivational orientation, value orientation, meanings, etc. We discussed pattern variables, right? That's the concept where we discussed the role level, individual level to role level, where we discussed, value-based choices, the confusions, the dilemmas, etc. Then we discussed system, where we discussed the AGIL model about survival and its functioning. And finally, we discussed integration, where we discussed cybernetic hierarchy of control in terms of energy exchange and information exchange. And we have seen if there is a break in this exchange, there will be disturbance in the equilibrium, feedback mechanisms will function, bring back the equilibrium. Thus, we can say that Parson built a complete architecture of sociology, right? At the individual level, social action, role level, pattern variables, system level, AGIL model, integration level, cybernetic hierarchy of control, and connected everything. So you can say from micro individual action to macro, systemic stability, we have seen here. Any criticisms are there? Over abstract and circular, like AGIL, which in turn have to fulfill, take an economic system, in that itself AGIL. Within that again AGIL. So you keep going like that. Endless, circular argument. Status quo bias is there, right? And then neglect of power, Western orientation, functional tautology, keep, he's assuming all institutions exist because they serve some function. So that's what functional tautology. Okay, so that's about the session. You can say Parson built one of the most ambitious intellectual architecture in sociology. He connected individual action, social interaction, and systemic stability into one integrated framework. So if Durkheim gave sociology its structure and Weber gave it meaning, Parson united the two into a system of order. And he transformed sociology from study of actions and motives to study of systems and maintenance, and made his theory a true master analytical framework. There is a question, why Parsons' theory is called as grand theory? Why Parsons' theory is considered as master analytical framework? I hope you got it. So this is what you need to explain. And guys, that's about the session. Thank you so much for attending. See you in the next video. In case if you're looking for any mentorship on sociology, classes, test series, get in touch with us. We'll help you there. See you guys.